I try
And
to do, like with my therapist, we work on, that's why I thought your class would be good, because you'd mentioned like mindfulness, and she works on a lot of that with me, like mindfulness and breathing techniques, and we already do a lot of that in therapy. So I guess that kind of stuff might be able to help me, because it does help me every day now. So maybe that's the only thing I can think of that, would help me in that situation, is trying to use what I have been with her, in that process.
And Devin, is there anything for you that you would kind of categorize as that eighth birth fairy, the one thing that you don't want to have happen yourself, or that happening with Loretta? Anything that you can think of in particular?
I just hope it all goes smooth and both are healthy and everything comes out good.
And is there anything that you can think of kind of that would be in that category of just what you don't want to have happen?
Well, I mean, I just hope there's not complications and,
So just other kind of medical interventions are kind of the main concern, and just having to do anything outside of kind of that natural birth that you're wanting to have.
I mean, I understand C-sections, if it has to happen, that's fine. Just not, what you see, pick in between, keep the kid, keep her, or, something, the baby's not breathing when he's born, or something along those lines, just want it to be smooth sailing, and maybe I know there'll probably be a few little speed bumps, but hopefully that's all there is to it.
And one of the things that I like about that birth fairy story is that it mentions how that one thing that you don't want to have happen, how people don't want to talk about it or deal with it ahead of time. And that's where can be a lot of benefits, because if we've already discussed what that looks like, if anything ever comes to that, you have already dealt with it previously to be able to kind of see how that plays out. And so that's something that we'll kind of work on. So today what I wanted to do is kind of combine some of what we talked about last time with breath awareness, and combining that with some other techniques so that you can kind of utilize it in different ways. So if you look at the symbol for birthing from within, it is a labyrinth. So a labyrinth, do you know the difference between a labyrinth and a maze?
No.
No. Okay. So with a maze, you have a starting point, and then you have to find your way to an end point. With a labyrinth, what happens is you enter it, and you have to go through it to get to the center, and you actually come back out the same way you went in. So one interesting thing with a labyrinth is that sometimes people feel kind of hesitant to enter one, because you have to cross that threshold. Just like we have to go, if you're going from one room to the next, you have to open the door and go into the next space. If you look at that in terms of the birth process, or anything that we do that's kind of that transformative activity, or something that is a huge transition for you, even becoming pregnant, for instance, you really have to kind of step into it and kind of get into that space. So what I wanted to do today was actually draw a labyrinth. So I'm going to try to utilize my computer so you can see my screen, so that you can draw that along with me. So what I'm going to have you do is go ahead and grab a sheet of paper, and then you can also grab a pencil or pen, or if you have like bigger sheets, you can do marker, you can do any of those, works well for drawing labyrinths. Okay. So I'm going to pull up my program here, and I'm going to try to share the screen so you can see that really well. Okay, so can you see?
Yeah, I have no idea what it looks like.
Yeah, and I will work with you on that here. I'm going to see if I can get a color that is easy to see. Okay, we'll try the black here. Okay, so we're going to kind of draw a plus sign to start with. And then I'm going to kind of change my colors just so you can kind of see what I've added to it each time.
Okay.
And then we're going to draw little corners on either side here around that plus sign.
And so should it be open-ended? Because on my end, it doesn't, like your lines don't go all the way around the sides of the X, like the cross. So should it just kind of come down and so be open on the side then?
Yeah, so you're gonna
Okay.
have, I'll just kind of move this up. Can you see it a little bit better if I move it up?
Well, yeah, I can see it. I just didn't know if it was cutting out on my end or if it was
Okay.
supposed to be open-ended like
Yeah,
that. So
yeah,
that-
they're all going to be kind of open-ended corners.
Okay.
So you want those paths kind of in between. Okay. And then the next stage of it is going to be to add little dots in between all of those squares and the corners that we just did. So I'm gonna do this a little bit bigger so we can see that a little easier. So you're gonna put a dot in each of those corners. Okay, and then we're gonna connect kind of the top of that plus sign with that first line. So this is gonna make a little arch here. So connecting those. So connecting that plus sign to that first line. Okay, and then we're gonna pick up that corner on the left side and we're gonna draw an arch to the dot on the right. Okay, and then after we do that one, we are gonna pick up the dot on the left and we are gonna draw that over to the corner here on the right side. So we're gonna pick up this dot and bring it over to connect here on the side. Okay, so after we connect that one, we're gonna pick up the end of the line on the corner on the left, and we're gonna bring it all the way around kind of to that end of the plus sign here.
Okay.
So we're gonna pick up this corner and draw it all the way around to connect at that plus sign. All right, doing okay yet?
Yep, I think I'm getting it.
Okay. And then we're going to pick up the end of the plus sign on the left side, this corner here, and we're going to draw that all the way around to connect with this kind of that corner part on the right. So we're going to pick up that end of the plus sign and come all the way up and over. And we're going to connect with that corner of the plus sign. And then we are going to pick up the corner on the left side. We're going to bring that all the way across and up and over. It's a lot different doing this on the computer than with chalk or pastels. All right, and picking up that dot there. And then what we are going to do is bring this dot on the left side, and we are going to bring that all the way around to connect with that corner here. And with these, you'll see that as we kind of work on the outside in and coming across, you'll kind of see where that all connects. So we're going to pick up another color here so you can kind of see that difference again. So we're going to pick up the corner on the side here. And we're going to take that dot and go all the way across, up and over. Making it smooth and having that little pathway is a little bit easier if you can do that. It's a little tricky with this one. And then we're going to pick up the next color. Now we're going to grab that, that edge here of the corner. And we're going to come up and over again. Good, and we're making just that big arch all the way around. And then connecting with the plus sign. And doing okay there?
Yep.
Okay, good. So what I'm going to have you do then, we are going to do some breath awareness with your picture. So you're going to use your finger to go inside of the pathway here. So what we're going to be working on is where there's that space between the lines. You're going to go inside there and follow that all the way to the center and coming in and around to get to the middle and then coming right back out again. So we're going to do that with breath as well. So you're going to follow that line as you're taking a breath in. And again, just working on breath with breath awareness. We're not trying to speed things up. We're not trying to slow it down. We're just using that breath while we're tracing that labyrinth with your finger. So I'm going to give you a minute to do that. So I'll kind of set the timers for that so you can kind of see what would feel like a minute. So this is a way to kind of focus on thinking breath with having to do some concentration along with it.
Okay.
So you can go ahead and get ready and I'll tell you when to start here. Okay, ready? Go ahead. And tracing while you're using your breath. So feeling that rise and fall of the chest, allowing yourself to follow the pathway with your breath. Okay, so that was 1 minute. So how did that go for you?
Yeah, it was fine. It's like you're trying to really focus on, okay, don't go, accidentally go into the other line. So it's different trying to focus on your breathing and trying to follow that, without, like, oh, I'm going to go in the wrong spot. Did I go the right way?
Yeah, and if you notice, you might have had some areas where it was wider and a little easier, and then it kind of narrowed and got a little bit more difficult, and you had to kind of focus a little bit more on where you were getting through there. And how about, did it feel like you were far away sometimes or close sometimes to the middle and weren't really sure where you're at?
I guess I'm not sure how to answer that.
Okay. So
I
you
was
felt
just
like you
making
could,
sure. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, so you felt like you could trace the path pretty well with your picture?
Yep. Yeah, I thought I was able to. I mean, it didn't turn out, I don't know if you can see it, but it's not too horrible.
Yeah, oh yeah, it looks really nice.
So, yeah, it was just more, because all the circles kind of trick your eyes a little bit. So you're like, oh, did I go in the wrong lane? Did I go outside the line? So that was the only thing that kind of tripped me up a little bit. But otherwise, yeah, I was able to, keep track of my breathing and circling around here.
Mm-hmm. So let's try it one more time again, doing breath awareness for another minute. And again, that will feel kind of like that, kind of symbolizing that contraction and having to breathe through that. So we'll give you another minute here, same thing, doing breath awareness. And go ahead and get started.
Okay.
Okay, and how did that go that time? Was it a little bit
Not
different?
not too bad. It was pretty similar as to before, just trying to concentrate on, yeah, not going outside the line, but then also focusing on my breathing as well. So I
Mhm.
guess kind of like last time where I said it gets easier the second time because I not know what to do, I guess to say.
Sure. And this time we're going to put a little bit more challenge with it. So I'm going to have you use your other hand to trace it. So your non-dominant hand finger.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll do 1 more minute again here, this time with the other hand. All right, go ahead and get started. Okay, and how did that one go for you?
Yeah, it's weird how different it was, because when you're using your dominant hand, you're like holding the notebook in a way, where you can see everything. So in this, holding it this way, it's like I couldn't see parts of where I was going, and then I did kind of lose track, and I'm like, oh no, I think I went into the other one. So that was a little more different for me because I don't know, I don't know why that happened, but yeah, I wasn't able to do as good as I did with my right hand.
Mm-hmm. And I think this exercise really, symbolizes birth very well because we enter the unknown all the time with birth. And even if people have given birth before, it's never the same. And we always have kind of those unexpected things that may come up, just like we talked about with that birth fairy story last time. And how, sometimes it might feel like labor is really long when we actually all of a sudden are almost to the end point and we don't realize it. And sometimes it might feel like things are going really quickly, but then there might be a longer period at the end where you might have, a longer delivery process. And so there's so many different aspects of that that kind of tie into that birth process, which is why Birthing from Within has that as one of their symbols. And with labyrinths, we're fortunate in the area where we actually have some labyrinths you can walk. So Phoenix Park in Eau Claire has a labyrinth that you can walk. And if that's something that you're ever interested in, I would be happy to do the labyrinth walk with you, or even taking your partner there and walking that and doing breath work with it. The center in Eau Claire also has a heart-shaped labyrinth, which is kind of neat. So that one you can also walk as well. So we have a couple of them in the area, which is kind of neat. But
Is the one in Phoenix Park, is that the like right in the middle of the park where the stone seats are, and then in the middle is kind of like a maze? Oh, okay.
Yeah, so a lot of
I
times
just thought that was some random thing.
yeah, it's actually a labyrinth, and so people walk it for meditative purposes. And so there's labyrinths actually all over the world. There's one in Michigan that's all made up of lavender plants, and so there's labyrinths all over the world. Some of the churches have them. So it's really kind of a neat symbol, and you can even find labyrinths that you can use made out of clay, or making your own pottery ones to trace to work over to. So a really nice way to add in some pain coping strategy with it, but then also that symbolism of what labor is actually like. So what I would like to do next is kind of teach you another pain coping strategy. So we mentioned with breath awareness, typically a lot of times people have their eyes closed for that exercise. Sometimes that's easier to kind of tune everything else out and just focus on the breath. This one that we're going to look at is called non-focused awareness. And this one is kind of the opposite. We want to have our eyes open. This is one where when things are extremely intense, this is a good exercise, whereas breath awareness might be a good one to start with, you know, as soon as people are even in early labor or when you're having to kind of breathe through your contractions when they get more intense. With non-focused awareness, this one, we are going to keep our eyes open. So what you do with this exercise is that, like I said, it works well kind of when things are really intense, when people are in severe amount of pain or discomfort, or even, you know, if they're feeling more anxious, you're going to look around the room around you. And so you want to see what's in front of you. It might be other people, might be objects in the room. See what you feel, what you're sitting on, maybe what your clothing feels like on you. If there's any music or sounds around, what the lights look like, maybe if you've had something to eat or the taste in your mouth, any smells in the room. So you're just paying attention to all of those. So what I'm going to do is we'll set another minute time frame, and I'm going to kind of talk you through non-focused awareness. So again, your eyes will be open. We're just going to kind of pay attention to what's around us. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. So what I want you to do is, with your eyes open, pay attention and make note of what is around you in the room you're sitting in. How is your chair feeling against your skin? How is your clothing feeling against your skin? Do you feel contact with your glasses to your nose? What do you see around you? Are there any smells?
Do you want me to be saying out loud what I see?
You can just be thinking it, yeah. What smells do you smell in the room? Are there any noises that you hear? Any taste in your mouth? Any objects that are touching against your skin, clothing, your seat, anything in front of you? Objects in the room, what's on the walls, the feeling of your feet against the floor. Okay. All right. And how did that one go for you?
Not too bad. It's it reminds me of something else I do in therapy where it's, I don't know what she calls it, but it's the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think it's like 5 things you can see. I actually just saved it. Yeah, it's 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, hear, smell, and taste. So it's very similar, you know, to the mindfulness stuff that I do now. So it's nice that it's, you know, stuff I'm already familiar with. So yeah, it's, you know, feeling the chair, smelling the paint, you know, in the nursery and all the pictures, and so I'm, you know, just focusing on looking at everything.
And in the context of what she gave it to you for, is it similar to kind of what we talked about of kind of being in more of an anxious situation or intense discomfort, anything like that?
Yep, that's exactly what it's for. So like when I'm having bad anxiety, because that's what I see her for, is my anxiety and panics. It's gotten worse being pregnant. So yeah, that's something that she has me do, or I do it when I'm driving, you know, because I get driving anxiety. So when I'm driving, you know, I'll look for things, kind of feel like my seat, feel where my feet are, and yeah, taste in my mouth, things I can hear. So yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. So yeah, it's something that I already do now to help when I'm having bad anxiety.
So what I wanted to do is just give you a few moments just to kind of jot down some thoughts about kind of the difference of breath awareness and non-focused awareness, maybe how you think you might use those during your pregnancy, during labor. So I'll give you some time just to kind of jot down some notes and kind of thoughts on that.
Focus on breathing more, concentrate more, because that's what I use it for. Like I'll sit and just try to close my eyes, focus on my breath. And with the non-focused, I wrote down that it gives you a chance to distract yourself and kind of feel things and be aware of other things besides your anxiety, or in my case, at that point, pain. So that's kind of the difference I see in the two of them.
Okay, great. And as far as when you think you might use them, do you have one that you feel it might be more beneficial to you, or one that you're thinking you might even work with kind of right now or going forward, kind of while you're just being pregnant even?
Well, I use the breath awareness a lot. I guess it's all gonna depend on how that day goes, because I have no idea what that pain is gonna feel like, and I know like when I'm in pain, I have a hard time focusing. So I guess it'll be. I don't think the non-focused will work for me if I'm in pain and there's a lot going on. I think I'm gonna be really distracted. I'm probably gonna want to be utilizing, people with me, or probably I think I'm guessing that the breath awareness is probably going to be my best bet, because it's something I do now, where the non-focused, I do that when I'm having anxiety, but I'm guessing when I'm in massive pain, and I don't think I'm going to be in the right mindset to be like, okay, what do I see around the room? I think that's going to probably frustrate me, and I will probably use the breath awareness more, I'm guessing.
And there are some things that you could do in the room or with people around you that you think that might also kind of help get you into that more relaxed state. If there is a lot going on, what kinds of things do you think might be helpful to have in that setting that might help ease some of that distraction? And
well, I like to be like in a calm state, so I'm guessing, like if I am in pain, I plan on sitting like on a exercise ball, so just like utilizing things around me to kind of help me feel better. Utilize people. I'm sure Devin will be in there with me, and I'll be like, okay, you need to help me breathe and do this with me, so I plan on hopefully using him to help me. And then yes, things like the birthing ball, because I'm sure I'll be able to like bounce and distract myself that way. So that, I guess that might be part of like the non-focused awareness. But yeah, I guess, like I said, I really won't be sure until I get there what I'll be doing.
And some other things to kind of think about too, or even, how light or how dark the room is, if they allow you to change that. If you tend to do well with music, bringing that with you, so you have that, even affirmations or certain quotes or pictures or something like that that tend to bring you to more of a relaxed state might be something else to think about as well. One thing along the same lines that I wanted to discuss is kind of the difference between pain and suffering, because they're very, very different. So pain is kind of a physical sensation that is our brain and body connection. So it's that message getting sent to our brain to tell us to feel pain. So for people, it can be inevitable when it comes to birth, and some people not as much, but suffering doesn't have to be. So suffering is something that can only happen in the future. So, how much longer is this going to last? Can I take any more? Thinking, will this get any worse? Those kinds of things are more of a suffering-based thought process. And pain is going to be more of, just being able to feel it and then move on, whereas suffering is kind of what your mind is telling you about it. So those are some things too to kind of think about that difference and how your body and you respond to it. So I just wanted to read a little passage. This is from the Heart-Centered Pregnancy Journal book that I mentioned. And I would highly recommend this book too if you don't already have it, but it has kind of some passages and some different areas where you can journal along with a lot of the topics that we're talking about. But it says, by cultivating a practice of mindfulness prenatally, you can reduce suffering in labor. Mindfulness means existing in the present in a state of curiosity, receptivity, and awareness, being present to what is in that moment. without creating a positive or negative story about it. In this state, there's no room left for suffering. There's only what exists in this moment and this moment and this moment. So like I mentioned, that real big difference is just that suffering is kind of what's happening in the future, whereas with pain, you're just kind of focusing on that specific kind of short period of time and right where you're at in that moment.
Okay.
One thing that I wanted to also work with you on is a technique called scaling. So if you had to say, rating a pain level from 0 to 10, 0 being no pain, 10 being the most, at what point do you think you would really have to kind of focus and that things would start to get more intense for you, where you would have to really kind of be breathing more heavily or looking at some other tools to kind of get you through it? At what level of pain scale for you?
I guess that's hard to answer because I'm sure, birthing pain is going to be a different type than anything I've experienced. But for the most part, when it comes to pain, I'm able to, just kind of not notice it so much. I don't want to say I have a high pain tolerance because I've heard about a lot of women with high pain tolerances, wanting an epidural like an hour into labor. But I don't know. I would say maybe 6 or so. I wouldn't want it to get too bad before I start trying to like relax myself. So I would want to get a head start and kind of, pay attention to like when my contractions are coming and kind of, start my breathing process or however I'm choosing to help relax myself. But I would say somewhere around like a 6 or 7 is probably when I would want to start trying to get myself in like a more calm state to prepare for the worst, worst pain. But then at the same time, like I said, I don't know what I would do because I wouldn't want to sit there and just focus on the pain either. And I don't know if that would make it worse or not, but I would say between 6 and 7.
And if you got to a 6 or a 7, what are some things that you would do at that point to kind of help yourself kind of work through that?
Probably, using the breathing techniques like I do now when I start to get nervous, because I'm sure I'd be getting nervous at that point, like, oh no, what's going to start happening? Or I would probably try to distract myself by like talking to people, asking questions. I kind of, like when I'm at the hospital, I like to ask people stuff. So I'd probably be talking to the nurses if they're there, or looking up things on my phone maybe, or just, trying to distract myself too, or trying different techniques. Like even now when my back hurts, I go to the chiropractor, but like at the hospital, I would probably try to utilize that, like the birth ball, or I do plan on sitting in the tub. I don't know if I want to give birth in the tub, but I know I do want to be in there because that does relax me. Even now being pregnant, I take a lot of baths. So at that point, maybe I would get in the tub then, or, try to start getting myself pretty relaxed in my body.
Yeah. Water can definitely be another way to kind of help manage discomfort. And what's great about that is that you do have a choice, because some people who love water might not love water while they're in that moment with birth, or they, like you said, that you might not want to actually give birth in the water, but you might change your mind and you might want to. And so just kind of being open to knowing that you might feel differently when you get to that point. One other thing that I wanted to mention with that is even noise level. Some people are very quiet, but when they're giving birth, they're very loud and, make different sounds that they're not used to their body making because they're just in that moment. And that's another way that you might release pain. And some people might be very quiet. And so just being open to knowing that you might be that loud person or you might be that quiet person too, and to allow yourself to be in that moment, and you might feel differently, at that point than you have in a different situation. So just being open to what might come with that too. So that might be something else to think about.
I've thought about that, and I kind of, I have a feeling I'm going to be very verbal, not verbal like loud, but when I'm uncomfortable, I like to let people know because it's an anxiety thing. So if I'm in pain or I don't feel good, it makes me feel better to tell people. So I'm guessing whoever's around me is going to hear me talking constantly, like, oh, I feel this, I feel that. Like I imagine myself talking a lot, to tell people like, hey, this is uncomfortable. I don't like this. So I guess that's how I picture it in my head is me maybe not more making sounds but talking a lot, because telling people what's going on helps me feel better too.
Yeah. So what I would like to focus on for next time is we're going to talk about more about the stages of labor and kind of what might happen in each of those stages. We're also going to talk about some prenatal nutrition and how nutrition plays a big role in your general health and all of that. So with that, I'm going to send you a form that allows you just to write down what you're eating for the next week. So we're not asking you to change anything with it. We're just asking you to document what you're eating, and then we'll talk.
Being inside, it's so hot today.
Yeah, it's very hot. And how is everything going with pregnancy and kind of where you're at with everything?
I've not too bad. This week's been a little better. I think last time I talked to you, I told you I had like tons of appointments and I was super busy. So it's calmed down a little bit, and I've been able to just rest and sleep and get caught up on my sleeping. So it hasn't been too bad. I had my OB appointment last week, and he keeps telling me that he wants me to deliver early, so I didn't really know why. So I sent an email yesterday to his care team kind of asking, why he wanted me to deliver early. And she said, of course, the doctor wasn't in today, so hopefully I'll find out tomorrow. But she's guessing it's something with me being diabetic. But, hopefully since everything's going good, that won't have to happen.
Yeah. And kind of what are your thoughts on all of it and how you feel about that suggestion?
Well, I mean, when we had my appointment last week, he told me that the baby's actually about a week behind. So I'm not super concerned about him getting big, I guess. I mean, I'm sure a lot can happen in the next 2 months, but I know a lot of women have to deliver if their baby's really big, because of diabetes and stuff, but I'm not really on that path. So hopefully, yeah, if I, don't have to, I don't want to be induced, but I guess we'll find out what the doctor says, what his reasoning is, because he never really did tell me. He just said he wants me to deliver early, but I'd prefer for him to come out on his own. I don't really want to be induced. I think if I knew I was going to be induced and had like a due date set, I think that would give me a lot of like anxiety, like waiting for that date. So I'd prefer it all just to happen on its own. So we'll see, but.
Yeah, and hormonal wise, there's a lot of benefits to having you go into labor on your own, where it switches on different hormones and things that kind of help your body. But obviously, if there's concerns about blood sugars and things, and the next best thing is helping that process along. That's something we can kind of explore once you have some more information from your OB too. So today I just kind of wanted to start with some relaxation to begin with. So I'll have you just go ahead and close your eyes. We're just going to start with a little bit of that breath awareness again here. So first of all, just kind of thinking of that breath, breathing in and feeling that expansion of the rib cage and letting that go, feeling that breath move past the lips, feeling the rise and fall of the chest. And while you're in that state of breath awareness, we're going to do a little bit of loving kindness today. So this is another meditation that allows us to soften our hearts and our bodies, kind of feel more empathetic and getting us into that state that can really help with us relaxing and kind of focusing in on what we want to do. So first, what we're going to do is send loving kindness first to your head as you're breathing through that. Sending love and kindness to the eyes, to the ears, to the lips. Sending loving kindness to the throat, to the mind, to the lungs, to the core, to your belly, to the womb, to your pelvis, to your vagina, to the thighs, to the feet, and to the toes. Feeling that love throughout the body. Feeling that warmth and kindness. Okay, we'll have you go ahead and open your eyes. And what I want to do is just kind of talk a little bit about where we ended last time. We were talking about diet, and I know you had mentioned that you already do a lot of tracking with being diabetic. And anything that you noticed with kind of your eating patterns and where you're at and kind of what you're focusing on right now?
Still kind of the same, trying not to eat a lot of the carbs. What I noticed, like now that I'm more busy, I don't eat bigger meals as much. So like usually I wake up, I don't eat breakfast just because I've never really liked to. Because I get, even when I wasn't pregnant, like if I eat too soon after I wake up, I just get like nauseous. So I don't like to eat in the morning. Well, my morning, it's really afternoon, but usually I eat something like a wrap with like meat and cheese, lettuce, for lunchtime, and then supper is usually some type of like meat and vegetable. I'm trying to think of what I had last night. I had like some broccoli salad with my wrap for supper, or like chili. I've been eating like leftover chili without beans, so I kind of seem to eat lighter in the afternoon and then a little bit heavier at night. And since I am kind of on a night shift schedule, I usually do snack and eat throughout the night, like sugar-free Jell-O, yogurt, cottage cheese. It's kind of when I get more snacky is when I'm up at home, because everyone else is sleeping and I'm here awake, not doing anything. So it's like, this is my prime time for eating. So I've actually been trying to eat more a little bit the last week, because since the doctor said, the baby is a little behind, he's not concerned about me gaining weight, because I actually lost 4 more pounds, I guess.
Okay.
And he told me, he's like, it's probably just because you're eating healthier now being pregnant than you were before. And I said, probably, because if it was up to me, I'd be eating like I was before and eating like pizza and at least going out to eat sometimes or eating some junk food, where now I really don't. So he said that's not necessarily a bad thing. He's like, you're probably just eating healthier than you were before.
Sure.
So he didn't seem concerned about my weight at all.
Yeah, and the baby is pulling those nutrients from you too. And one of the things that I find that sometimes is more of a challenge for women is really to make sure that you are eating enough protein. So what's recommended is about 100 grams of protein a day. So certainly with eating lower carbohydrates, you want to up the protein so that you're getting enough nutrition. So that might be something, with tracking, is trying to calculate the amount of grams of protein that you're getting, and kind of looking at, where your protein sources are. So you mentioned, like some dairy products, so cottage cheese and Greek yogurt are higher in protein. And as you're aware of, the beans tend to be more of a carbohydrate and can raise your blood sugar. Compared to, other things, and whole grains are important. If you are doing some carbohydrates, the whole grains tend to kind of slow those blood sugars a little bit, so they're not spiking, to keep you full and help you that way too. And with eating smaller portions and smaller meals throughout the day, that'll just kind of keep your blood sugars more stable too.
Yep, and that's, I try to incorporate whole grains, but sometimes even that can kind of raise my blood sugar a little bit, so I don't eat a lot of carbs. And yeah, my doctor, he's like, I don't recommend doing keto while you're pregnant. And I was like, I'm not trying to do keto. Like, I still want my carbs.
Yeah.
So I try to, but yeah, I don't eat a lot of whole grains anymore. Like, I have some carb-free bread that I eat, but I don't know if it's necessarily has any whole grains in it.
Sure.
But otherwise, like, I'm sure I'm getting enough protein, because I do eat like a lot of meat. And then a lot of the keto chips and stuff that I eat are actually like protein chips or like protein cookies. So they either have protein, or I'm getting it from like the meat or the cheese, or all that. And when I did make chili, I made it without beans because I didn't want the extra carbs. And then I used like ground turkey instead of beef and all that. So
Yeah,
I feel like I'm getting enough protein, but yeah, maybe not as much whole grains, just because I start to feel sick if I get too many carbs. So I really try to. The only whole grain I think I ate yesterday was probably whole grain Sun Chips, and that was about it. But
Yeah, and the whole grains tend to have higher fiber. And as you might have been taught too with counting carbs, if you kind of subtract off the fiber from that, that can show that it's actually works less as a spike in that blood sugar that'll help slow it down. So that might be something too, is just to look for higher fiber whole grains, and that'll help with digestion too, because a lot of times the digestive system really kind of slows down as you get later in pregnancy, and so I think that'll help just kind of preventing constipation issues, things like that. And
Yeah.
magnesium can help with that too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was actually something my dietitian talked with me about too, is the fiber, because I was asking her, I told her a lot of things I eat have a lot of fiber in them, like the low carb tortilla wraps that I eat, those are high in fiber. Like the fiber bars, my keto ice cream, all of them have a lot of fiber. So she did talk with me about that too, about like getting enough, what kinds to eat and what not to eat, and how to subtract it. So yeah, I was already doing that before she told me to, but yeah, I didn't know there was like different types of fiber too either. So
yeah, the soluble ones tend to kind of make digestion a little bit easier, and those are going to be a lot of the kind of fibers and fruits and things that way. And eating kind of lower glycemic index fruits can get you some more fiber too, along with the kind of the whole grain type foods that are high fiber. Another thing that I wanted to mention today, last time we did some of the work with the labyrinth. Have you been able to kind of practice doing some breath work with that at all, or looked back at it since we did that exercise last time at all?
I haven't used the labyrinth, but I still use like the breathing. And I actually did mention to my therapist this week how you did have me draw that. And I was explaining to her, how I liked that your class kind of incorporates into our therapy. So I showed her my picture, but no, I haven't actually used it because like I told her, my anxiety is like getting better. So I don't, with being busy too, like a lot of times I forget to utilize the things I have, but I did look at it and I mentioned it to her, and I was like, it's very similar to like what I do. And I told her, I'm like, I never really used like a labyrinth or would have thought of it that way. So it was kind of nice that I feel like the both of between my birthing class and my anxiety, my therapy, it's all kind of like incorporated into the same. So it's nice to have them very similar.
Yeah, and kind of having some exposure to some mindfulness exercises before too, to make you kind of find where else you can use it too. So today also, I wanted to talk a little bit, Birthing from Within focuses a lot on storytelling and how stories can help us learn different things and kind of see the world differently. And we use a lot of mythology stories. And one of the stories that I wanted to read you today is called Inanna's Descent. So it is actually the oldest story ever written. It's from Sumeria is where it comes from. So I'm going to have you just kind of listen to that, and then we'll kind of talk about kind of different pieces. So if you want to kind of write down any symbols that you kind of see kind of coming up for you, or thoughts as I'm reading that story, so you can get kind of comfortable here.
Okay.
Perhaps the best way to learn about the journey you are now on is on the original way, through hearing a great story. Not just any story or even a personal story, but a mythic story. For centuries, hero myths have been told to entertain, but more importantly, to teach, inspire, and prepare initiates for their rites of passage. It is through identifying with a character who is larger than life that you internalize your heroine. Her mythic story, her call, her hardships, her determination, her cleverness, and her triumph will become an inner map guiding you through and beyond your own rite of passage. The ancient Sumerian myth of the journey of Inanna has proven to be especially powerful for parents because the warrior queens prepare ordeal and return to peril modern women's experiences during the childbearing year. Okay, so this is from the book Ancient Map for Modern Birth, so I'm going to be reading that story. So this is by Pam England, and she's the one who also kind of developed our whole program here with Birthing from Within.
Oh.
Inanna was a woman of power, a warrior, a queen, a poet, and a deepest, most sacred place of all. She saw the one who had been calling her, and the one who was still calling to her, her newborn baby. In this transformative event, the person Inanna had died, and the next breath, she was reborn as a mother. All right, so I'm going to give you some time to just kind of jot down some things and kind of think about that story and kind of what you gathered from it.
I just wrote down a few things.
Okay.
Did you want me to tell you like kind of how I perceived that?
Yeah, kind of let me know your thoughts on the story and what you found interesting or what kind of resonated for you.
Well, at first I was confused, but then once she started talking about childbirth and they kept saying, like you're not going to leave here unchanged, I kind of assumed that's what it meant. When you have a baby, like it completely changes your life. And when she was going through each stage, giving up her things, I kind of see that as kind of what you give as being a mom, maybe. Like it's not about you anymore. Like, sure, it wasn't fair. She was getting things taken from her, but it was probably like preparing her, for having a baby. And you kind of have to give up, I don't think you have to give up yourself, but some parts, for your child. So yeah, I just kind of took that as, oh, okay, like each stage she's going through it. I guess I interpreted that as maybe those were her like phases of labor. Sure. But I didn't know how, the only thing I didn't like connect together was when she was getting her things taken from her, like her rings and her robe, like if that was supposed to be, part of her stage of labor or just something as a mom that she was giving up like on her way there.
Yeah, and there's different ways it can be taken. It can, you can see it as kind of postpartum, like you had mentioned about how you're giving up pieces of yourself. It also could symbolize even labor itself and how people are kind of holding closely to what they want to have happen, but that might not be the case. And so you're having to let go of kind of your preconceived thoughts on what you want to have happen. It might also be even just yourself and getting vulnerable as you're going through labor. If you've kind of studied some of the phases of labor, usually in early labor, people are kind of feeling more contractions, but you're able to kind of still function through your day and able to walk through them. As things get more difficult, then you're having to kind of breathe more through them and really kind of concentrate and focus. And then people can kind of reach transition stage of labor where you really feel like you're ready to give up. And that was kind of the point that she got to where she was really feeling like she was ready to give up. And then you start not caring that you aren't wearing clothing and you kind of lose your modesty, as you get closer to baby coming. And so having her lose her clothing and things like that, that's kind of part of labor too. So there's a lot of different ways you can kind of see the story. And how do you see this kind of tying in with the labyrinth that we drew last time?
Like the labyrinth, I guess I don't know how to incorporate the two. Like I guess I was looking at the labyrinth as like a breathing tool. So I guess I'm not sure how to incorporate the both of them.
Sure. So if you kind of look at this story, she's hearing the call, and in this case, her call is her baby telling her, kind of giving a signal to her, and so she's having to get ready for baby coming. So that's kind of the preparation stages where she's having to close down her temples and get everything focused and ready for baby to come. And then she's having to go through these different gates of letting go and kind of change throughout there. And so if you think of that labyrinth and how we're having to go through all of those little passageways and having to let go of things and change our mind and change our focus as we're getting into that center. And in this case, that center is kind of where her baby is. In this case, the underworld symbolizes kind of the unknown. And so she's having to kind of the second part of that story is that she actually comes back out of that and kind of more into the after baby's born and kind of the postpartum stage. So that's kind of also like the labyrinth where we have to kind of go in and come back out the same way, but things seem different. So, and how we change so much with that process, how we're not the same as we were before. And so that is the story of Inanna. And as I mentioned, it's a great story, and great stories we can learn from and kind of hear about. And a lot of the Disney movies are great stories. So if you've ever seen the Moana, have you seen that movie at all or heard of it? So she hears a call from the sea and from her ancestors to go out and to help save her village and get them food. If you've seen Frozen 2, she actually hears a call from the river And if you haven't seen it, I won't tell you
I've seen it. I still like part 1 better, but yeah, I saw part 2.
So part 2, she's hearing that call, and then having to take a voyage. And so we see with Birthing from Within that birth is a rite of passage and a heroic journey. And so that's kind of where the story kind of comes in.
Okay.
So an activity that I wanted to do today is really helping get us ready for kind of the thought of process of opening and letting go, just kind of like in the story. So what I'd like you to do is grab a piece of paper, and then you can grab a marker or a pen, whatever you'd like to use for that. So what I want you to do is kind of think of animals and labor. So I don't know if you've ever seen any animals give birth, or how they are in their environments, like farm animals or animals on TV or anything like that. If you think about how they give birth, what is their environment like? So what I'd like you to do is kind of write down 4 words of what you think birth looks like as far as the environment for labor.
Well, I've seen a lot of cats being born. My mom used to have a lot of cats, so we've had to help a lot of the mom cats get their babies out. So I've seen a lot of them be born.
Okay. And so if you think about kind of what environment do they kind of go into when they're in labor? What does that look like? So you can write kind of 4 conditions or words that you think of there.
I couldn't think of 4, but I have 3.
Okay.
Like when I've watched like a lot of our cats give birth, they always kind of have this look in their face, like they're maybe scared or cautious, with you being around, because I'm sure they're in pain and maybe not knowing what's going on. I put that they could either be still or calm, scared or cautious, and then like a nesting. It's like a lot of our cats would always go on our porch for some reason and always like nest on the porch in a blanket, and that's where a lot of them gave birth, was on the porch. So yeah, I just wrote down nesting, scared, cautious, or still and calm.
So they kind of look for kind of finding a comfortable place to lay in, something soft. Mm-hmm. And if they're cautious around with you being around, they kind of want to be alone and kind of on their own area. And then 4 to 6 words that you would imagine would make a birth easier or less kind of self-conscious during birth.
For an animal or just in general?
In general. Okay. So 4 words that you would imagine would make birth easier or would make you less self-conscious.
I guess when I think of like myself and what I would want, to make me feel like comfortable would be like space, because I know when I'm in pain, that's exactly why I told my mom yesterday. It kind of hurt her feelings, but I was like, I don't think I want you in there. I said, only because knowing myself, I was like, you're mom. Anytime mom is around, you get more, it's almost like I'm more susceptible to get whiny and pouty, like, Mom, I need you, because I've had that happen before when I had her come with me like last year to get my tooth pulled, and I ended up having a panic attack and couldn't do it because they told me that she couldn't be in the room with me. Well, then the next time I went without her, and that didn't happen. I did it all by myself, and I didn't have to be put under like they were going to do. So I think space is going to be good for me when I'm, in labor. I think I'm going to want someone there when I need them, but like I want to focus on my breathing and just concentrate. So I put space, understanding, because I'm sure I'm going to be saying and doing all kinds of things during that time. Calm environment, and then, helping me be educated is going to help me feel less self-conscious, about things. Like I don't want to know too much, but I want to know enough to where I'm aware of what's going on, why this is happening. So I think being educated, like by my care team while I'm there, will really help me feel better too.
Okay, good. And then 1 to 2 words that kind of bring a spiritual or mindfulness aspect to labor for you, something that kind of really resonates and speaks to you, just a couple words, either spiritually or kind of mindfulness based.
Okay, I don't really know how to put those.
Maybe something that's empowering to you, a word, or kind of how you want to feel.
Oh, okay. I think I have my words. Hopefully those work for that category.
Yeah. And so what I'm going to have you do is you're going to create a frame around kind of the piece of paper that you have. So you can add those words that I'll 6 of those words that you've put in there, and you're just going to draw them around kind of in that rectangular pattern. So just using that to create like a picture frame, made out of the words.
Oh, you want me to frame the piece of paper with the words?
Exactly.
Oh, okay. Okay, I think I have my frame.
Okay, so what you're going to draw in the center is a picture of something opening. So what you would see as an opening. So however that looks to you, that might look like a window, that might look like a flower, something that symbolizes opening to you.
My drawing.
Okay, perfect. And then just to write down in kind of your journal area, just what you're drawn to after kind of looking at some of these different words, or what you're drawn away from when it comes to labor and birth.
Like you want me to
Open to birth, open to what might happen, thinking of the cervical opening, thinking of kind of your heart opening, all of those things, and kind of what you're drawn to help get you to that point, or what might you're drawn away from that might make it harder for you to get to that point.
Oh, okay.
Okay, perfect. So if you think of what we can open, as I mentioned, the cervix can open. We can open our eyes, we can open our throats, we can be open to new ideas. We can also be open with kind of mindfulness and spirituality. And a way that we can kind of achieve some of those things is really through gratitude, through giving and receiving words, through, just being open and kind of just feeling that love, especially during that time and during now, for yourself and for people around you, that can kind of keep you open to those ideas. One thing that I wanted to kind of end with today is kind of exploring that idea. We call it the heart's question, which kind of ties all of these things in together. So in the story of Inanna, we talked about kind of labor land, so being in labor, and how we have kind of our unknown that we're exploring and what our known is. So that might kind of bring up feelings of excitement, being kind of knowing what's coming or not knowing what's coming. It might bring up feelings of worry or doubt, concern, but also kind of anticipation and looking forward to what might happen. So when we look at the heart's question, we kind of look at, first of all, where does labor begin and when, and kind of exploring that. So for some people, that might be at home. They might start their labor at home. They might be at work. They might be asleep. And if induction is required, they might be at the hospital. If people need to have other interventions like a C-section, that again might be at the hospital. So kind of looking at where that might happen. And then as we kind of explore that story of Inanna, looking to see kind of who we are now and who we might be as parents, and kind of looking at that change and looking at what will change for you and what are some things that you want to kind of hold and keep the same. And I think sometimes that's important to acknowledge that we're going to be different, but we also have some things that we want to retain and within us. And so just kind of looking at some of those thoughts and what you're willing to maybe give up and change so that you can have more time as a parent, but yet still retaining who you are kind of at your soul level.